The Vengeance Trilogy is an unofficial trilogy by Park Chan-wook, who wrote and directed each of these movies. He is also a staple in South Korean horror. Now, each of these movies, although unofficial, do follow the themes of revenge and kind of how that doesn't usually go well. I may sound like I'm being dramatic about this, but I'm being entirely serious. Trigger warning for absolutely everything. These movies are notoriously disturbing, not just visually, but emotionally and ethically. Each movie deals with the idea of revenge, and each of the people that star in this movie have a very good reason to be seeking out revenge, even if, in these cases, revenge doesn't go the way you expect. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance was released in 2002, and it was kind of a flop commercially, but it did win quite a few awards. The stars are Song Kang-ho, Shin Hak-yeon, and Bae Doona, all of which are incredible actors. Song Kang-ho is most known for Parasite, Shin Hak-yeon is most known, at least for me, for Beyond Evil, and Bae Doona is most known for Sense8. The movie begins with a radio host reading a letter that Ryu sent in for his sister. Now, Ryu is mute and deaf, and this is something that causes an issue throughout the movie because he can't really advocate for himself. He can read lips and he knows sign language, but most of the people around him aren't really willing to accommodate him in any way, so it can get kind of frustrating the way that people treat him. Ryu's sister is sick. Her kidneys are failing and she is in desperate need of a replacement. Ryu had originally been planning on donating his kidney to her up until it is revealed that their blood types don't match, so they can't do it, no matter how obviously he wished it was the other way. He isn't an idiot, he just makes some stupid decisions in his desperation. When Ryu goes to the bathroom after taking his frustration out at a batting range, he sees some flyers. They are for organ trafficking. It's something that he's going to need to think about. We get the chance to see the average day to Ryu, which is honestly a little bit sad. Ryu works at a steel factory, and it's almost a perfect job for him in some ways. While the other employees need to wear ear protection, he doesn't have to worry about it. He's hardworking, he's exhausted, covered in grime, and he needs the money so that he will have a place to live and his sister has a chance to live. The apartment that they live in is not a good one, so it's got very thin walls and people are loud, so his sister can't sleep, and if Ryu's sister can't sleep, neither can he, even though he can't hear anything. The first disturbing moment we get are their neighbors, which are 3 guys, and they are pressing their ears against the wall to jerk off. They think that Ryu's sister is having sex, but she's actually in an intense amount of pain. By the way, she never gets named. When Ryu isn't working or taking care of his sister, he is with his girlfriend that lives in the same building as them. She knows sign language, and she's pretty cool. She's a part of an anarchist organization that I'm pretty sure she mostly created by herself. At least, that's what it definitely seemed like at this point in the movie. It is an aspect of the movie that I do find to be pretty funny. I really like the relationship between Ryu and Youngmi. She's there to support him even when he's not having some great ideas. We later learn that they had gone to the same deaf school and that's how they met, until she got kicked out when it was revealed that she wasn't actually deaf. Even though Ryu seemed to be doing pretty well at his job, he gets fired. And the person that fires him is an office worker, and we kind of get to see how different the office workers have it compared to Ryu. Because they didn't really have much of a break, but these guys are going out to lunch together. He then goes to get his kidney removed. Following the directions that are written on the flyer, he gets a meeting with the black market organ traffickers. It is a middle-aged woman that really looks like she's seen some shit, and her 2 sons. She agrees to give him a kidney and put it into his sister if he brings her money and gives her a kidney. It's a lot to ask for, but I cannot emphasize how Ryu is so desperate at this point. He gets completely screwed over in this deal. When Ryu wakes up, he is naked on the concrete, and the area where the surgery was performed is completely vacated. Obviously, he is also missing his kidney. Just to add insult to injury, he finds out that there was a kidney, and once the payment goes through, they can start the surgery. Legally. The money that had been stolen from him. After yelling at him for doing something so stupid, Youngmi decides to do something even stupider. Youngmi makes the suggestion that they go and, kidnap someone. Now, the first person that they think of kidnapping is the manager at the plant, but that's a little bit obvious, and they end up witnessing something that changes their mind to someone else. Park Dong-jin is the president of a company, the boss of Ryu's boss. When they were following Ryu's boss, a former worker of the company confronts Dong-jin on his firing. He begs him to rehire him, and obviously, Dongjin is doing everything to defuse the situation without having to actually hire him back. The man starts to cut himself with a box cutter, which does not go the way I think he intended. He's just kind of lightly cutting himself. Like, yes, he's bleeding, but he's not in danger. It is the reason why they decide to take his daughter instead of the other guy's daughter. This is someone that wields a lot of power, so he'll be a lot more willing to pay the money to get his child back. It probably should be a little concerning how easy it is to steal the daughter, and when they take her, they pretty much explain to Ryu's sister that she is with them because her mother's been in an accident and her father is checking on her, not realizing that Dongjin is divorced. They send a ransom note to Dongjin asking for 26 million won. In modern US currency, that's about $21,000. To be fair, that is a lot of money, but it's also an insanely small amount of money. Multiple people are going to die, and it's for $21,000. Although the little girl commented once that she didn't know why her father had such poor friends, she's having a fine time. Like, this isn't exactly a traumatic experience for her. At least, up until the point where Ryu's sister realizes what is going on. She leaves the little girl to watch television, going into the bathroom and committing suicide. At the same time, Ryu has picked up the money and from the meeting place. He left Dongjin tied up, assuming someone would find him soon, and when he comes home, Ryu is oblivious, and he's in a great mood. He's teasing the little girl and playing around with her. Then she gives him a note that his sister left him. Upon reading it, he realizes what his sister has done. He breaks into the bathroom and finds her having long passed. In his grief, he lets out a scream and mentally shuts down. The only thing that he can think of doing is burying his sister in a place that they had loved when they were younger, the last place that they felt safe and happy. The location is a pond, and that is where Ryu is starting to bury his sister underneath various rocks. Now, for some reason, this movie has, like, a severely disabled man, mentally, and it's just very strange. He ends up trying to take the necklace from the daughter, which causes her to wake up and get out of the car. The death of Dongjin's daughter is entirely an accident. She was calling out for Ryu after walking away from the car. She needs to cross the little bridge, and she falls in. Because of Ryu's deafness, he can't hear her crying out, which leads to no one being around to save her. And he just leaves her there, too shocked by how wrong everything went to get help, and it's obviously nothing could have been done. It doesn't take long after revisiting Dongjin being tied up to a pole and blindfolded for his daughter to be retrieved and evidence to be taken. He has been released and he's talking to a police officer. He's trying to figure out what happened to his daughter since he paid the ransom. There's a great scene where Dongjin's actor where he's at the autopsy for his daughter and you can't see anything that's happening to her body, but the man is devastated and it's written all over his face. Now obviously Dongjin is completely ready to kill whoever intentionally or unintentionally killed his daughter. Now, the first person that comes to his mind is Pang, who was the man that attempted suicide earlier in the movie. Dongjin goes with a police officer and finds that this time, Pang had been successful in killing himself. He had placed poison in his food, trying to wipe out his family, which he was successful with minus a little boy that Dongjin helped save. The boy will end up dying at the end of the movie. It seems as though there was going to be one good thing coming out of all this mess, but there wasn't. Dongjin eventually finds the apartment where the picture of his daughter was taken. It doesn't take long for him to figure everything out. One, because the neighbors are talking about their previous neighbor, and the woman on the radio is reading the latest letter that Ryu has sent in. He's notifying her that his sister had passed away and that he blamed himself for her death. This fact is only confirmed when Dongjin goes to the pond where his daughter's body was found. He's skipping rocks, and while he's picking them up, he accidentally uncovers Ryu's sister's body, which looks pretty good considering how long she's been there. During the autopsy of Ryu's sister, Dongjin is significantly less bothered by what he's seeing. He's totally detached from this because he's starting to realize that this revenge plot that he has been obsessing over is probably due to an accident. Ryu was burying his dead sister and his daughter had simply drowned. On the other hand, Ryu is currently hunting down the organ traffickers that stole his kidney and his money. The doctor that had done the surgery on him is frozen with a needle in her arm, while her son rapes the unconscious body of a woman on a gurney. He had already taken out one of her kids, and he's not afraid to take them all down. It's actually a pretty cool scene. It feels nice that Ryu is able to get revenge on the people that had taken away his chance to save his sister in a significantly more legal way. Like, if they hadn't stolen that money from him, she would have gotten that kidney. There is one good shot on Ryu, though, where he gets stabbed in the side. It's going to be seriously damage him, and it's how he's going to be for the rest of the movie, because he is technically just bleeding out the entire time. Unfortunately, Ryu is not the only one getting revenge. Dongjin has found Youngmi and has decided to get a little bit of revenge on one of the people involved with his daughter's death. He's trying to get more information about Ryu from her, and he uses a car battery to torture it out of her. He also kills a delivery driver that just showed up at the wrong time. He was delivering food, but he witnessed Dongjin there, so, you know. As much as Dongjin seems unaffected by her pain, he still needs to put a blanket over her head to avoid having to look her in the eyes. She gets electrocuted to the point where she urinates on herself, and there looks to be blood mixed in there. In a final attempt to keep herself alive, Youngmi threatens Dongjin. She is an anarchist and is claiming that there are a bunch of other anarchists that will show up if she dies or goes missing. They'll show up and kill him. Dongjin doesn't take her seriously, and I can't really blame him. Every bit of anarchist activism that we've seen her take part in, she's alone. So Dongjin kills her. Ryu has returned just in time to see his girlfriend's dead body being carted out of the apartment. He's not in great condition, not only because he just lost his sister and his girlfriend, but once again, he is actively bleeding. When Dongjin learns of the organ trafficker's deaths, he realizes that it's time to finish this. And it is kind of nice of him that he just let Ryu finish his business, which I thought was nice, I guess. It was unintentional. I don't think that Ryu ever had any intention to hurt her in any way. Even when he was getting the crying photo to the ransom, he was more annoying her than anything else. But she also wouldn't have been in the location that she was if he wasn't burying his sister there. Dongjin admits that he knows that Ryu is a good guy and that he would understand why Dongjin has to do this regardless of that fact. At this point, Dongjin is simply going through the motions of revenge. He knows everything that Ryu went through. He also knows that Ryu wasn't going to hurt his daughter. He goes under the water to cut the back of Ryu's ankles, severing the Achilles tendon. By doing that, Ryu can't stay above the water and he slowly drowns. And it's also kind of gross how the water just gets filled with blood. To get rid of the body, because apparently Dongjin is fully expecting to return to a normal life after this, he cuts up Ryu's body and puts him in different bags. In the biggest plot twist that I've seen in a while, Youngmi's anarchist friends are real, and they killed Dongjin, and I thought she was full of it, but apparently not. So many people died, and it all ends up being for absolutely nothing. It is a rough movie to get through, even though it's quite good. Out of the 3 movies, I would say that this movie is the best acted. Song Kang-ho does a great job conveying emotion, and considering that he is a grieving father, it hits pretty hard at times. This movie truly did end up being about how revenge doesn't work, even when it does technically work out. This movie is pretty devastating, too. I had a pretty hard time hyping myself up to watch the second movie in the series, Oldboy. For reference, Oldboy is actually a adaptation of a manga, but it's a very loose adaptation. Oldboy was released in 2003. The writers were Lim Jun-hyung, Hwang Jae-young, and Park Chan-wook. The stars are Choi Min-sik, Yo Ji-tae, and Kang Hee-jun. Other than Oldboy and Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, Choi Min-sik is known for his role in I Saw the Devil. Oh Dae-soo is not like the best person in the world. When we meet him, he is drunk and disorderly, and it is his daughter's birthday that he is currently missing because he's drunk and disorderly. He did get her a birthday present, which is a pair of angel wings. He ends up being picked up by a friend, and that's the last time that he talks to his wife and daughter, getting kidnapped and kept in a room for 15 years. The room he's been kept in looks like a hotel room. It's still a cage for him, though, keeping him in one place for such a long time. He's definitely not used to human interactions and doesn't seem to be entirely there by the time that we catch up with him in movie modern time. He's frequently knocked out, the room cleaned, and him groomed. Earlier in his stay, Dae-soo discovers that his wife had been murdered. It's probably by the person that had taken him, but everything is blamed on Dae-soo. I mention this, but it really doesn't have any effect on the rest of the movie. I thought that he was going to be followed by the police. I thought it would have Dae-soo hiding from the police or being more involved, but no one seems to care about him. It's just kind of a throwaway line and explains why he can't find his daughter. After 15 years, Dae-soo is knocked out and wakes up on the roof of a building inside of a suitcase. He manages to get out and accidentally saves a man from committing suicide. His people skills could really use some work because he just kind of walks away when the guy starts talking about his problems. A man that appears to be homeless brings Dongjin a wallet and a cell phone. He ends up going to a restaurant where he thinks he recognizes the chef from television. Her name is Mido. He gets a call from the man that kidnapped him, and this results in him kind of passing out. And thankfully, Mido takes him before he's just laying there. When he wakes up, he and Mido meet again for the first time. We also get the hint that there might be some serious issues in Mido. So, Dae-soo starts to try and force himself on her, and she stops him. She then tells him in the future that she doesn't want him to stop, even if she does try to resist him. That is an incredibly concerning thing for someone to say. Their first adventure is trying to find out who had taken him and why they did that. Every day, Dae-soo was only served dumplings. It's the only thing that he ate for 15 years. So he's pretty confident that he would be able to identify the dumplings if he was eating them. He does exactly that, going through the city to find those dumplings. And they do find the restaurant. That leads to Dae-soo following a delivery driver to a hotel. That is where he had been held for the last 15 years. That's where he decides to get revenge on the man that had prevented him from leaving for such a long time. But he needs to make sure that he gets as much information as he can, which involves removing the man's teeth with the back of a hammer. It was deeply uncomfortable to watch. Dae-soo is also kicking ass throughout this scene, which is unexpected considering he had been pretty much a zombie mode for the last 15 years, but he manages to take out a bunch of guards. The shorthand of why Dae-soo was kidnapped was that he knew too much. Lee Woo-jin is a man that was paid to have Dae-soo jailed for 15 years. He's a very wealthy man, but at one point he and his twin sister attended the same school as Dae-soo. One day, Dae-soo caught Woo-jin and his sister having a very intimate moment. Way too intimate for siblings. He didn't keep his mouth shut. He told his high school friend Ju Hwan, who was a minor role in this movie and is eventually killed by Woo-jin, who spreads that all over the school. Out of shame, Woo-jin's sister killed herself, and that day was when Woo-jin decided that he was going to get revenge on Dae-soo for spreading those rumors. And with respect, sir, someone was eventually going to find out about this. You guys were doing this at school, in front of windows. You were not being subtle about it, so someone would have found out at some point. Woo-jin tells him that in 5 days there will be a death. It will either be Woo-jin, who has a pacemaker that apparently he made it so it'll explode if you press a button, or Mido will die. It's not long after that that Dae-soo and Mido have sex for the first time. Enthusiastic consent, which I guess is good, maybe, considering what we learn later. A few things happen the next 5 days, one of which is that Dae-soo learns that he has been hypnotized repeatedly since he was taken, so his mind's been pretty thoroughly messed with. In their final confrontation, Dae-soo gets the full effect of how much revenge has been placed at his feet. Dae-soo has been trying to figure out why he was kept for 15 years, why this was done to him, and what happened to his daughter, because we don't care about his wife at all. A present is given to Dae-soo, and he opens it. He starts flipping through the photo book inside, which shows his daughter slowly growing up into Mido, meaning that Mido is his daughter. In another room where Mido is waiting for him to come back, she opens a present that her father had been planning to give to her 15 years before. She wears the wings that he had planned to give her the night he was kidnapped. Obviously, she has been hypnotized as well. She doesn't remember her father or what happened to him, because none of his stories ever click in her mind. She never mentions her own father. She's definitely not 19, which would have made her 4 at the time of his disappearance. So she would have been old enough to remember. And she seems like she's in her early to mid-20s, but she doesn't remember her father. You know? The news of Mido being his daughter is devastating, understandably, for a multitude of reasons. 1, he's been having sex with his daughter. And 2, he's concerned that if she learns about this, she might end up killing herself, which is the same thing that Woo-jin's sister did, but his sister also knew that they were having sex. Dae-soo is doing his best to do whatever it takes to get Woo-jin to not let this out. He is desperate to keep it secret. He starts to behave like a dog for Woo-jin's entertainment, wagging his tail and licking his shoes clean. Then he goes above and beyond to prove that he is truly never going to speak another word against a person. It is probably the most infamous scene from the entire series. Dae-soo cuts his tongue out. That seems to finally have Woo-jin satisfied with his revenge. Dae-soo finally gets his hands on the device that should have set off Woo-jin's pacemaker to kill him. It was obviously dropped on purpose, and he's desperate. When he presses the button, it just ends up playing the sound of Mido and Dae-soo having sex. Woojin is satisfied, killing himself in the elevator. He was able to get revenge on the person that had ruined his life and taken his family from him. At least in his mind. When Dae-soo leaves, he gets in contact with the woman that had been hypnotizing them all these years, and she's pretty touched by his letter, which is the only reason she showed up. And when she shows up, he asks her to erase the knowledge that his daughter is his daughter, which is an interesting take on this. There were definitely different options that he had, but this is the one that he wanted. Who am I to tell him that he did wrong? He's a fictional character. Maido eventually arrives to find Dae-soo, and they reunite. She's just glad that he's alive, although obviously she's concerned about his current state. And he can erase his memory, but he cannot erase the fact that he cut his tongue out. Okay, so this is kind of a wild thing for me to say, but I honestly thought this movie was going to be more disturbing. And I'm pretty sure it's because I built this up in my mind a lot, but... And, I don't like teeth or hand or, mouth things, and there was teeth and tongues, so as you can imagine, I probably didn't have a great time, but, it could have been worse. That being said, it's definitely the most disturbing movie out of the three. There's a lot more incest than I thought there was going to be. I did not realize that the revenge was done because of a legitimately, intentionally incestuous relationship going on. It's a very strange movie. Choi Min-sik is very good at it. Yoo Jae-tae plays a really convincing and unsettling character, even if it is very obvious that the actor is way too young to play the character. Maybe that was meant to show the effects of how long Dae-soo was kept and that kind of stress does to someone, but this man looks like he would have been 10 when Dae-soo was taken as an adult. The movie is definitely something that you need to buckle in for. It had me stressed so many times because you don't know what's going on. Out of the three movies, I think Sympathy for Lady Revenge is probably the least respected, and I don't know if it's because, it's a woman-led, or if it's not as disturbing, which it definitely isn't, or if it's just because it has a happy ending. I don't know why people don't like it as much, but I did enjoy it. Sympathy for Lady Vengeance was released in 2006. It was written by Jung Seo-kyung and Park Chan-wook. The stars are Lee Young-ae, Choi Min-sik, and Kim Se-ho and Oh Dal-soo. I will admit I did not realize that Choi Min-sik was in this until I looked at the cast list. He looks so different, for obvious reasons, but he's just got a distinct face and I did not recognize him. She ends up getting a job at a bakery just to kind of prove that she's adjusting well to life outside of prison, and at this bakery there is a employee who would have been, or is the age that Won-mo would have been if he had survived. Now he's very much like a puppy-ish character, and I didn't really like him, so I'm not going to talk about him that much, but he is kind of like a constant reminder of who Won-mo could have been. The witch was imprisoned for murdering her husband and the woman he was having an affair with. Then, she decided to barbecue them and have a nice meal. She was someone that demanded sexual favors from the other women and treated the other prisoners abhorrently. It reminded me of Hays Code lesbian characters, but over the course of 3 years, Gwamja had been feeding her bleach. That resulted in her death. For Gwamja, 3 years is nothing compared to how long she has been waiting to get revenge on the person that really killed Won-mo. The thing is, it's not as though there was no one else on the planet that knew Gwamja didn't kill Won-mo. The lead detective of the case comes to the bakery and buys a cake that she made, and he seems very apologetic. His wife gets furious when she finds out who the woman that he had bought the cake from was. He knew that she didn't kill Won-mo. He had to give her evidence that she would need to reenact the murder of the little boy. It's a wild scene to have take place with press leaning in and trying to get images of her reenactment. The truth is, Gwamja was covering for a man that had taken her in when she was pregnant. Now, this man was not a good person, but he had been a teacher at her school, so she thought that he would be, and he wasn't. This is the character of Mr. Beck. He is played by Choi Min-sik, and he definitely comes across as a much more cold and calculated person than Dae-soo. He's also an actual killer of children. His only terms for her living with him was that she would be sexually available, and she would keep quiet about the children he kidnapped. Mr. Beck would kidnap children and extort money from their parents. They would not make it back to their families. When Won-mo was murdered, Mr. Beck had Gwamja take the fall. He convinced her to do this by kidnapping her baby daughter and threatening to kill her if she didn't do it. So, she did what she had to do. We take a brief interlude of Gwamja making revenge plans to meet her daughter. Now, her daughter has been adopted by some Australians, and she doesn't know Korean, and her name is Jenny. Mostly, Jenny wanted to know why she had been abandoned by her mother. There's this weird running theme that Jenny grew up without a mother, but That is just factually not true. She has a mom, the mother that adopted her to Australia. But Jenny wants to get to know her biological mother. Jenny even goes as far as to hold a knife against her neck until all three of them agree that she can go to South Korea. To Gwamja, this is yet another devastation. Jenny will be in danger while in South Korea. Mr. Beck is not someone to be trusted, and Gwamja obviously doesn't want anything to happen to her daughter. It's hard to bond with your child when you're trying to hunt down the person that made you give her up. It doesn't take long for Gwamja, and when they come back, Gwamja and Jenny, for Mr. Beck to send someone after them. Now, the two assassins that he sends are played by Song Kang-ho and Shin Ha-kyun. Now, I recognized Kang-ho immediately because he has a very recognizable face, but Shin Ha-kyun had actually grown a beard in the time, so I did not recognize him at first. But it's cool that they were, everyone's here. So, Gwamja kills them. Someone that Gwamja had hidden in her sleeve was Mr. Beck's current wife. She was in prison with Gwamja from 1993 to 1999. I guess it's not much of a surprise to say that Mr. Beck is a terrible partner as well as a general terrible human being. So I guess she can consider this revenge for what he did to her as well. Mr. Beck is knocked unconscious, and the next time that he is awake, he is tied to a chair inside of a classroom. Gwamja shoots him in the feet, particularly to make sure that he won't be running away, but also partially because of what she found when poking around his house for more information. She found trophies from multiple children that he had killed, something that she was unaware of up until this point. There are also tapes of his murders. Gwamja uses those tapes to bring the family of the murder victims together, showing them what Mr. Beck had done to their loved ones. And there really isn't that much of a debate over what they were going to do to him. The main concern was making sure that no one was going to turn on each other. They will be killing him that evening, especially after it is revealed that the ransom money Mr. Beck made them pay for their deceased children was going towards a yacht. While this debate is going on, Mr. Beck is getting the full experience. He can hear everything that everyone is saying, and he deserves every hit that he's going to get. The families go in groups. They are very firm about letting everyone have their turn, especially for wanting for Yoon-ju's grandmother to have a chance to do what she needs to do. When the older woman enters the room, she's covered in everyone else is covered in plastic, but she isn't. It's mostly to make sure that there's not blood all over them. But when she leaves, she doesn't have any blood on her. She used a pair of scissors, which I believe might have belonged to her granddaughter, to stab him in the base of the neck. This kills him. They all take a picture around his dead body so that no one will be able to come forward in the future without implicating themselves and their loved ones. They have dinner together, quietly accepting what they have done, but also aware that they had probably saved countless other children. Gwamja goes home, bringing home a cake that her daughter, her daughter doesn't care about the cake. She's more concerned about the 3 apologies that her mom gives, and her mom's face ends up going into the cake, and it's a sweet ending. And you know what? It is a happy ending. After so much heartbreak throughout this series, maybe revenge is something warranted at times. Gwamja manipulated a lot of people that might not really have deserved it, but she only ever killed someone if they really, truly deserved it. She didn't kill the witch because she was worried about becoming a victim to the woman. She killed her out of a personal benefit and putting a stop to the abuse that she'd been able to get away with. She killed Mr. Beck not just because he took her life away, but she needed to protect children like Won-mo and her daughter. He frankly deserved what he got. The Vengeance Trilogy is an unofficial series, but it follows revenge and what it causes people to do very well. Now, each of these movies kind of has a different interpretation, and I think it ranges from, is revenge really warranted, to, is this too far, to finally, fair enough, some people deserve to have revenge gotten on them. It's an interesting view of how people think that they have been wronged. In the first movie, so many people were wrong, but it was less by each other and more by a system that works against the poor. The second movie had someone wronging another, but that person goes way too far. Because he was sleeping with his sister, it wasn't just a rumor. The third movie is unique in that it acknowledges that sometimes revenge can be the only course of action. Can you imagine if Mr. Beck was just kept on, he just could keep on doing whatever? That's a fair range of ways revenge can go. Each of these movies are very well written and very well acted. They have some icons of Korean cinematography. They all obviously handle incredibly dark topics, but I definitely think that Oldboy is the most extreme of the 3, and I would say that Sympathy for Lady Vengeance is the least extreme. One comment I'll always have towards disturbing movies is that they often are just disturbing for the sake of grossing out the viewer. In this case, it's trying to tackle incredibly difficult topics to tell a story and make a point. It's also trying to comment on the world. It just feels weird to say that I like this series, but it is good. So thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Amanda. This has been Horror Historian. This was a really difficult one to get through because there's so many, like, upsetting things that happen in these movies that I was just like, I feel like I needed a nap after the first one, definitely. My next movie is going to be very short. It's going to be Skinamarink. And I believe I'm going to have my full schedule on my TikTok if you want to take a look at that, just in case you want to get ahead of everything. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you would like. I will see you next Friday, which is when I upload, usually around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.